welcome everybody. Welcome back to United in Strengths, your character strengths community, where we take time to pause, to breathe, to remember that we have 24 character strength resources within us, and we really try as best we can to connect in our communities, in our home environment, our work environment, and then right here in your character strengths community called United in Strengths. And just so delighted to have a very special guest for the continuation of our transformational stories, which is a new thread or theme that we're doing in United in Strengths. And so I'm very excited to have Marjorie here with us. And I wanted to say a little bit about Marjorie, and then we'll turn it to her. So Dr. Marjorie Aunos is a longtime participant here in United in Strengths and doing different VIA programming like mindfulness-based strengths practice and others. She's a psychologist and a researcher from Montreal, Canada. Her expertise is working with parents who have intellectual disabilities. She's published a number of book chapters and peer-reviewed articles on the topic. And if you look into that a little bit, you see that she actually has hundreds of what's called citations, which means that lots of people are not only appreciating her scholarly research work, but then using that in their own work, that her research is advancing other people's research when you have hundreds and hundreds of citations, which is true for her. So that's really tremendous. In 2012, she sustained a spinal cord injury in a car accident, and she was a mother to a 16-month-old at the time. The accident and the subsequent injury gave her an interesting perspective, as she says, on parenting and disability. Grieving her old self came to be harder than she thought until she learned about positive psychology and character strengths. And unequivocally, her love for her son saved her, she says, and the love of learning helped her understand how. So welcome, Marjorie.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. I know we've interacted in different ways in the different courses, but I wonder if we could just kind of start things off, if you could just share a bit about your story to help people understand a little bit about your journey and what you've been going through, what's been happening for you.
Perfect. So first, I want to say that I'm very honored and I feel very happy about being here today and sharing my story with you guys. As I often say, learning about positive psychology and character strength really saved my life. And hopefully at the end of this session, you'll know why. So if I just give you a little bit of context, I had a very great, very loving childhood. That everything, that happened when we were a child happened. I went to university, I studied in psychology, and during one of my summer jobs, when I was about 20, I met Julie, and Julie is the mom with an intellectual disability. And I was actually working with her daughter at camp. And when I met Julie, she was like hustling, trying to make everything look perfect all the time for her daughter and her son. And she kept saying to me, I need to be perfect because if I'm not, child welfare will take my kids away. And when I met her, when I saw how she was doing things for her kids, I knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So confident that this was my calling, I started reading peer-reviewed articles just for fun. And that's when I realized that one of the top 4 leading experts in the field worked 3 hours away from me. So I took my car, I went to see him, and I said, I want you to supervise my thesis, which he agreed. So I was very happy. So I graduated with my PhD at the age of 25, became a clinical psychologist. I worked in a rehabilitation center where I had the opportunity to develop a service, a clinical service, to support parents with intellectual disabilities and continue research in the topic. So I was like very, very happy. Beside my career, which is a small summary, I lived a pretty normal life until I had my car accident in 2012 that left me paralyzed from under my armpits to my toes, basically. So my son, as Brian said, was 16 months old. And after my accident, I dove back to work right away because I needed to feel normal, and normal was work for me. until sort of all my roles and my new limitations, I guess, sort of all came together, and I started struggling. And when I started struggling, it led to depression, anxiety, and some post-trauma that came back. It was like very hard for me to reconcile my new physical condition with my identity of that go-getter, you know, that sort of goes, and so I was profoundly ashamed of it, and that's how it turned into depression. Now, before Ryan and I start having a conversation, I just wanted to share with you sort of an excerpt of a manuscript that I wrote, or have been writing since my accident. Writing was a little bit of cathartic for me through it all. And I just want to bring you to the moment I knew I was going to have the accident. So out of the blue, my car sways to the left. I can feel my tires are not adhering to the road any longer. Despite my few attempts at redirecting my car, I feel it is useless. The car is unresponsive. I think of all those cars I have seen on the side of this road in the last couple of months. I know this is what's happening to me. I now sway to the right. I see the pickup truck up ahead, and I know of that car behind me, as I realize we have perfect timing. A collision is inevitable. I'm sorry about my swearing, but I say, fuck, don't tell me. This cannot happen to my family again. They lost my cousin just a bit more than a year ago, and now me? This is unreal, just unreal and unfair. My son is with my parents and my sister. They love him. My sister saw him born, and my parents spend a lot of time with him. He's happy around them. He will be okay. And my family, they're strong together. They know how to get through grief and loss. They will pull through together. But how ironic, fucking crazy life. I feel light and at peace. Death is coming for me, and I'm not scared. A bit pissed off that this is happening to me, as I have so many plans for my life. But today is a pretty good day to die. I am as happy as I'll ever be. But shit, I can't die. I promised my son to see him grow and raise him well. If I died, my son would become an orphan. That's not okay. So I command the angel of death to go away, as I have decided I am not dying today. Thomas is the last person I think about and see before I close my eyes. Collision. Wake up. In a very softly voice, I hear my cousin's voice, like a whisper in my ear. I open my eyes. I have difficulty seeing and focusing on my surroundings. I am not in pain, which is surprising. My legs feel numb, as if they were swollen like marshmallows. Feeling is weird, like nothing I have ever felt before. I feel tired as I try to run a full diagnostic of my body and predicament. This is what I know for sure. Each time I open my eyes, my eyesight seems to be improving. My hearing is not completely back, but it's getting there, as I can hear a man trying to speak to me. My arms? I don't feel my arms. I can't move them either. I check my legs. Shit, again, I can't move them either. I feel my heart sinking to my stomach. I'm starting to freak out. I'm afraid, so afraid, and I feel alone. So I breathe, as I do not want to panic, as this would only make things worse. I remember I am loved, and this is the time I have to pull all my knowledge and internal resources together towards my survival. I need to pay attention to what I can control, and I need to tackle one issue at a time. So I decide to focus on my arms. Please, God, give me back my arms. With my arms, I can embrace my son. Please, God, give me back my arms. I promise I will be okay if I have my arms back. With my arms, I can hold my son. Please, God, give me back my arms. I need my arms to take care of my son. Oh God, please give me back my arms. I promise I will be okay if you give me back my arms. a little tinkle in my fingers on my right hand, and now the same tinkle on my left hand. I am moving my fingers. I got my arms back. I now close my eyes and I can breathe. That's it.
Thank you for sharing this, Marjorie. I have heard you share bits and pieces of the story in different ways, different places before, but
it was incredibly moving to hear that.
This was the most poignant and the most striking.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing. And can you take us to when you're in the hospital bed, you're getting control of your arms and realizing the parts of your body you'll be able to get to work. Where are you at in terms of your hope, your sense of love for your son? Where are you at with some of these important qualities?
Well, for the longest time, even though I was a psychologist who looked at disabilities, who looked at, like the DSM was my Bible. So my lens was all about sort of deficits. I wasn't used to talking about strength in psychology. I mean, we did have a strength-based approach, but I didn't know about the 24 character strength. I didn't know about positive psychology and how we could use it. And so for me, it was like, I could see all my limitations. And in terms of hope, I had little hope, except for maybe knowing that I would work hard, just like I've always worked hard. That's something that my parents sort of taught me and showed me, because I needed to be there for my son. But the way I was narrating my story at the time, it was like I was doing it for my son. So it wasn't for me. I didn't have hope for me. It was just, I had a mission to do, and that mission was to raise him. And so it was just, I'm doing it for my son. And I'm like, so there was nothing where I was strong. It was all, of course, any parent would do that. Any parent would like work hard for their kid. And so I'm just like everybody else, and I just have to figure it out. But it was very deficit based, the way I narrated the story at the beginning.
So it sounds like entrenched in the deficit base, but then still finding that sense of hope and love, but more for your son, and that was a driver of everything else. Yeah. And can you take us a little bit through some of the recovery? I'm sure the physical rehabilitation was unimaginable to probably 99% of us listening, maybe identifiable by a couple of us here, but can you share us a little bit about that journey? And I'm sure you're still doing that too, but yeah.
So I was about a month in the hospital, and during that month, I was basically in bed all the time. The time that I was in a wheelchair, because you needed to have certain criteria to be able to switch to rehab. And one of the criteria was that twice a day you needed to be able to sustain the wheelchair. And the wheelchair brought a lot of pain. Like I felt like I was dismembered, because I had like surgery the night of that accident. So I'm operated from like the top of my head to the middle of my back to consolidate my neck. That's why I couldn't feel my arms and move them. My spine was touched and they needed to consolidate it. and in the middle of my back. So that was the month in the hospital. Then I was 5 months in rehab. And from the get-go, and that was like my go-getter type of attitude. I went full on, and I got the best staff actually, because they sized me up right away. And my physio was like, this one wants to work. And so the first time I met him, he basically said, you transfer from your wheelchair to the bed where we could work on. And I was like, well, I've never done that before. And he said, I'm sure you're going to figure it out. I'm here to make sure you don't fall. So you just do it. And I was like, okay. And basically I was known in rehab. Everybody knew me, even if they didn't know my name or had never met me, because I was the one who grunted the most. I was the one who kept asking for more. I was the one who showed relentless sort of, perseverance and determination in that rehab, because to me it was, if I get better, I can take care of him. And so I need to make this time worthwhile, because during the time that I was not home, because I was in rehab in the hospital, I wasn't with him. So it was sort of like, if I'm not with him, I need to make sure that the time I spent away from him is worthwhile for both him and I. So I needed to work out like I never worked out before.
Tremendous love for your son, and then that kind of wider perspective of seeing that bigger picture, that long view for your son, and making good use of your time. Also just in some of your writings and what you've said here, for sure, I'm sure people are picking up on your perseverance, character strength, which is kind of a middle strength for you, I know. And then also your self-regulation, which is actually a higher strength for you, which is quite uncommon. Most people have it in their bottom 1 or 2, and you have it in your top strengths consistently all the times you've taken the VIA survey, the 2 times. So the self-regulation is all about having a tremendous discipline and self-discipline and staying focused, working hand in hand beautifully with perseverance. And you said those are sort of hardwired in you from early on. How do you think those worked with your strengths of love and your strengths of hope and that perspective we were talking about? How do they all work together for you?
Yeah. Well, love was sort of like my end goal, right? It was the reason, the aim. It was like the fuel. It was, everything why I was doing, what I was doing. And then self-regulation, it was sort of, as soon as I knew where I was going with this, which was I need to be home the most independent as I can, so that I could then sort of take care of him and not just be able to take care of me. And so when that was clear for me, then it was like, what's the plan? So let's make the plan. And with that plan, we need to have, all this different steps. And with those steps, I'm just going to work one step at a time, but I'm going to know like there's many steps after that. And I'm going to build up to me returning home, to me being able to change his diaper. I mean, he was 16 months old. I hadn't done that in like months, right? I wanted to change his diaper, even though it's yucky. It's not something that we all want to do, but it's something that parents do. So for me, it was sort of like, I need to do what parents do. I wanted to, push his stroller. So we had to figure out, how am I going to push a stroller if I need both my arms to like push my wheelchair? So it was really about sort of that plan. And, I would have told you I didn't have any hope. Yet, knowing what I know now after, reading all your books and reading about, positive psychology and character strength, I know that planning was sort of like, I must have had hope, right? Because you don't plan and you don't have a goal if you don't have hope. Hope is sort of enmeshed in all of this. So I guess in a way I did have hope, and I had hope for the future, and I really wanted to go back to being Thomas's mom, and that was very important to me.
Yeah, such and your strength of love is such an inspiration. Your love as a parent for your child, it's such an inspiration. You said a number of times that positive psychology and specifically character strengths, and this is your quote, this is kind of an amazing quote, literally saved your life. Could you say a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah. So, I survived the car accident. I survived rehab. I went back home, survived that part too. I went back to work. I was like all gung ho. And then when everything got where I got overwhelmed with all the roles, years later, so we're talking like 6 years later, I fell into depression, and it was very, very hard. And I could still take care of Thomas. That wasn't like the problem. It was just juggling sort of work and all the expectations that I had pretty much for myself. That was difficult. And, everything I could hear in my mind was, you survived for Thomas, but where are you? Where are you? Like it was for him, but it was sort of like I had lost myself in all the process. I was a mom, but I wasn't anything else. And, I was doing therapy, and we were doing therapy. I mean, it was going well, I guess, for therapy. And I like my psychologist. She's good. But it was sort of like I was always in that negative type of frame of mind. I was just always like, this shit happened to me, and it was sort of about everything happening to me. And it was hard for me to sort of reconcile, like, you're strong, or you're like worthy, or you're enough, because everything was like against me. And you see like how that was like done to me. And I was powerless and helpless, and I couldn't do anything. And then when I found out about character strength specifically, it was sort of like, oh, hold on a minute. You know what? No, I wasn't hopeless. I wasn't helpless either. Love saved me. And that's why I wanted to read that excerpt, because you could feel the love. My narration, and it's exactly what happened to me during my accident. I really took you there. Said, I love my son. My love, I am loved. My son is loved. So then I realized, hold on, I was actually saving myself. The accident happened to me, sure, but I was actually doing something constructive during that time. So love saved me, which is a character strength. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm strong. That's good. I'm strong. Then, like you could hear spirituality, which is pretty low on my, character strength. I mean, in 2000, the first time I did it, it was the last one, right? Didn't like God, didn't, like God and I have a weird relationship. Yet I'm in the car and I'm calling for God, and I'm saying like, no. Now you have to pull in, all the resources, and I'm like willing to go wherever I can go. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it. And this needs to happen for me and for my son. And so I was able to call on that. And then I was able, when I felt the twinkling in my hands, I was able to call prudence. And I was able to say to myself, okay, hold on a second, don't move anymore. You could get things, worse. And realizing that gave me a great sense of power and strength. And it was seeing myself as different. And that's why I say that it saved me, because I would have stayed in that very negative frame of mind. But it gave me a mirror, and it said, look how you are. You're not helpless. You can do this. You have all the strength. You have 24 of them, and you could use them. And even your lower of the lowest, you can use it in certain circumstances that, requires it. And so you're not alone in that, because you have sort of all the strength and the resources that you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder if that relates to, you said in some of your videos, I've watched some of your videos on Instagram and Facebook, and you've sometimes used the word crippled as a word to describe that. Sometimes people use that word, often quite negatively, especially if it's used as a noun to describe a person. But to sometimes people use that to describe somebody physically. But you said my bigger issue was I was emotionally crippled, is what you had said. And what might you say about that and what you did about it?
Yeah. Well, the speech in where I referred to myself as crippled, it was linked to, I was bullied as a child. I think a lot of kids are unfortunately bullied when they're children. And so I had integrated sort of that very negative self-talk, that inner critic. And so that was my go-to, right? Something happened to me and it was like, oh, you weren't good enough. You didn't show strength. You're a loser. And it could be hard, like really hard self-talk. And so this didn't change, that self-talk was there. My inner critic was still very rough. It was sort of like, how could you let this happen? Almost, and it was not so much the accident, because the accident, I knew I had slid on black ice. There was really nothing that I could have done. But I had let depression happen to me. And I was a psychologist who had let depression happen. And so that self-talk was very crippling, because it kept me there, because I kept hitting on my head and hitting and telling me like how inadequate I was and not enough. And the character strength showed me the other side. And they said, you're not crippled. Look at you. You're doing it all the time. And we've talked about love being like actually my top strength, but love of learning is actually quite there at the same level. And so I kept learning. And as I was learning about, character strength and positive psychology, I could see, sort of the other message, the inner cheerleader in a way. I could see that, all those strengths were in me and I would be able to use them. So I wasn't crippled anymore. My message was different and the way I viewed myself was powerful.
It sounds like you really uplifted your character strength voices in your head, the love of learning character strength voice, the love, the kindness voice, how is your self-talk these days? Has it continued to build, or has it waned, or
yeah, well, I'm
you're human, so we all have some of that, but
right. I'm gonna share honestly. I still struggle. It's not easy all the time. But in the same time, I feel that I'm in a better place, much better place than I was before. And, it has also like changed the way I relate to others. So my son being so young, when I returned home, I needed help, especially since the first years, my house was not adapted to me being in a wheelchair. And, my top strength being love, I learned it probably from my parents, because my parents let everything go and like moved into my house to be able to raise my son, but in a way that was always very empowering to me. So it was very clear from the get-go that the message we would give Thomas was that I was mom and that they were grandparents who were helping mom with Thomas. And so that message was pretty incredible from my parents to do. And so, it was also sort of bringing like teamwork. And, the other part that I didn't say is that I had Thomas on my own. So I decided to be a single mother. And so that was my decision. And so in my head, I was going to parent on my own, right? With no help, because I thought you could do that on your own. And after my accident, I had to parent with my parents, which, it's great. And I'm so grateful, really, really grateful and appreciative for everything that they've done. but it wasn't the plan. The plan wasn't for me to live with my parents either at the beginning. And so we had to also learn how to negotiate our co-parenting arrangement in some sort of way. And character strength also allowed me to learn to spot the strength of other people, my parents, so that I could be in a better position to work with them, and so they would be in a better position to work with me as well. So it really went everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the more common questions we get at VIA is, do character strengths change? Do they change over time, and are they malleable? Can we grow any of these 24 strengths? And and there's a lot of research that we talk about, from personality research, of different ways that character strengths can change. But I'm wondering, if we pose that question to you, how you would answer that question through the lens of your story. Of, are character strengths malleable to you? And not just the way, I get that, you became more aware of them and used them more deliberately on the recovery and so on. But as you think of pre-accident Marjorie and post-accident Marjorie, do character strengths change? Can we deliberately grow them? How would you answer that?
Oh, totally. I've seen it and I do it. And, like, for example, spirituality was at the lowest. It was number 24. I called it my 24th strength. And as I learned about meditation and mindfulness, right? And all of a sudden it was sort of I realized that spirituality is not necessarily being, a devout Catholic. It's not about that. It's about, being connected to the world, being able to reflect on different things. And as, in the last years, especially after like depression and anxiety, that was something that I used to sort of like come out of it. And the more I used it, the more I felt I could use spirituality in a different way. The same thing for teamwork. Teamwork was one of my lowest strengths as well. I think the first time I did the survey, it was like 23 or 22nd strength. I worked on it with my parents because we needed to make it work. And I didn't want us to fight all the time in front of Thomas. Like, we needed to figure it out. And it grew and it grew, and I could see how teamwork, I've gotten much better. Because before, I was so independent, I didn't need to work as a team. I could do it all on my own, right? But now it's a different circumstances, and I had to grow that part of me so that I could be able to do that. So there's a lot of different things that happen. And, hope. I felt I was hopeless at the beginning, especially like the first years after my accident. And I could tell you, I feel very hopeful for the future, and I could see, a lot of things, especially in the upcoming months and year. I feel very confident that good things will happen. And so all of those character strengths were not very strong with me before my accident, or even before my depression, but now they're much stronger.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, and with any of these questions, by the way, that I ask, always feel free to say pass. We don't ever feel pressure to answer any of them. And we'll edit that out with any recording. But I'm curious, could you capture pre-Marjorie and post-Marjorie each in a word or a phrase? Just to help us you've done such beautiful sharing, but I'm wondering about capturing it in that way for some reason. That question comes to me, as a, what pre-Marjorie, how might you describe that in a word or phrase, and then post-accident Marjorie,
Yeah. The pre, I would say, overly independent, go-getter, with ableist conceptions and expectations of herself. And post, I would say, a much kinder, compassionate, happy. Yeah.
I could see that. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, there has been some research, and I haven't looked at it lately, on people who have experienced spinal cord injuries and happiness levels, and whether happiness levels go down or whether they go up. They dip for a while and then come back up, or do they come back to the baseline of pre-accident or not? I don't know if you're willing to share about your happiness levels before or after.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before the accident, you would have asked me, are you happy? I would have said, yeah, I'm happy. And I'm sure I felt it, and I'm sure, like that was true. When my accident happened, I was really not happy, obviously. It was really, really difficult. And, I mentioned sort of the ableist in me. One of the things that I had realized was, in the last few years, that I have sort of this very strong internalized ableist discourse. So thinking that, you need to be all, you need to be productive, all those sort of very strong type of attributes that don't necessarily make you very happy. And so, post-accident, that I was trying to uphold sort of those expectations and not doing a very good job at it. And not because I couldn't, because I think that I was able to do it to some extent, and first, up to a certain point. But my accident, what it taught me, and me being in a wheelchair, it's like everything slowed down, right? And so I can't do things at the same pace as I used to. I need to take care of myself first, right? Because if I don't, then I have a UTI. And if I have a UTI, then I pee on myself. I don't want to do that, obviously, because then I'm at risk of like different ailments. So it is about learning, which is pretty amazing. It's about learning about how to take care of me, because if I take care of me first, I can take care of Thomas, right? So it's not being selfish. It's actually being loving to my son, because it's, for both of us. And slowing down allowed me to see things. It's like high speed train going, and I was going really like high speed, so I couldn't see anything. And then my accident happened, and all of a sudden I could see the scenery, and I could see the beauty around me. I remember as a patient, sometimes I was waiting for my physio or my OT. And so I would wait in the gym, and I would see like other people sort of working out, or families together. And I learned to look and to watch and to be mindful. And I could see, and I have like tons of images that I could pull. I could see like a daughter who was mobilizing her mom's legs, and the love between the two was just amazing, and the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I could see couples who, despite disability of one of them, just being there for the other partner. And that was also very beautiful. And I could see like the nurses and the professionals all working with us and talking to us. They weren't talking to my disability. They weren't talking to sort of like me as like, oh, you're no good. And no, they were talking to me directly. And that also was beautiful. But I was able to see it because the train slowed down. And after that, I was able to see and to continue seeing that because my train has slowed down. And you know what? In a way, I'm happy my accident happened, because now I can appreciate what's around me. I can appreciate spending time with Thomas, because I had to prioritize not only my health care, but him, because I have so much energy in a day. So if I have that much energy, where am I going to spend it? And so, I was hard on myself, thinking that I didn't attain post-traumatic growth when I hit depression and anxiety and post-trauma. But I feel that I'm pretty much, there where post-traumatic growth is. I'm getting there.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it sounds like you've found a really deep levels of happiness and meaning. I want to before we turn it to the community and see what questions or comments people might have, I wanted to ask you. You were just talking about post-traumatic growth, and I wanted to ask you one more question, and it was actually interestingly going to be about resilience. And so, so I'm wondering, do you feel that you face new obstacles and setbacks and problems in your life with a greater resilience now, like that you apply all sorts of different learnings and character strengths to them? Or would you say it's about the same as it always would have been?
I think my initial reaction when something happens is the same. So I still have sort of that reflex, right? Because it's ingrained sort of from many years. And so I often go like, oh, it's not working, or like it's happening. You're letting, so this self-talk will come into play and so forth. But I am able to reframe, and I am able to use perspective. I'm able to even like reflect and sort of say, I don't want to be in the negative space anymore. So what can I do? What can I see? I've developed a lot of like appreciation for beauty and excellence. So sometimes that's the first one I'll use, or gratitude. I find that as soon as I put myself in a perspective of seeing the beauty or being grateful of seeing the beauty because I'm still here, even though I'm in a wheelchair, it automatically puts me in that frame of mind where I can now see and appreciate all the other character strengths and how they could help me figure out how to get out of, this particular issue or difficulty or whatnot. So, so I would say the initial reaction is the same as before, but I quickly sort of try to turn it around.
Yeah, all sorts of different resources that you're using with great specificity, and you're kind of widening the range of your signature strengths, your love of learning and kindness and love, and using them in all sorts of different ways, and then drawing from middle and lower strengths. And so it's a tremendous example of all the different combinations of strengths that you use.